We're gonna get started in about a couple minutes. We got some people that are running a little late, so 3 minutes, please. Carry on.
Thought so. Yeah.
Okay, it's 6:04. We will get the meeting started. First, I'm going to call to order at 6:04 the special meeting as listed and posted. Let's have a roll call for attendance.
Mrs. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Fleck?
Here.
Mr. Guerin? Mr. Gentry?
Here.
Mr. Quagliano?
Here.
Mrs. Melendi? Mr. Troy?
Here. Okay, we do have a quorum. With that, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. And Mr. Venetico, I think you have some people to introduce.
Thank you for having us. If my students and Ms. DiSabato could come forward. Because of the success of the Buddies Club at Huntley High School, Marlo and Ms. DiSabato, along with some of our special education staff, started for the first time ever a Junior Buddies Club at Marlo. Last month was our first meeting, and we had over 30 students and buddies come together. So I'm going to let Ms. DiSabato introduce our students who will lead us in the pledge.
Hello, I'm Amy DiSabato. I'm one of the special ed teachers at Marlow Middle School. I've been with the district 6 years. Two of our sixth grade students came to me this year. Lauren Verdonk is one of them. Her sisters are involved at the high school level in the Buddies Club. And what our Buddies Club is a chance for students with disabilities and not students with disabilities and without disabilities to come together for social events. And we had our first activity meeting the end of January, and we did get to know you games, and they did some dancing, and I want to give the kids all a chance to introduce themselves, and then we'll do the pledge. Okay? Hey, come here. My name is it's over here.
My name is Eden.
Hi, my name's Maddie.
Nope. Give me 1 second, bud.
Connor. My name is Iris.
My name is Maya.
My name's Amy.
My name is Mofia.
And my name's Ethan.
My name's Lauren.
Okay, why don't we have you guys kind of come up and around, and yeah, okay. Like that other one, bring like talk normally.
Go as close as you'd like. Mr. Armstrong will probably take the official one, but feel free to walk all the way up.
There you go. You can sit right here. Thanks. Okay, we got another one here. Have the parents take all the pictures that you want. Go right on up.
Get down more. There you go.
Yeah, I think
It's
All right, I've been informed that one of you up there has a birthday today. So, Lauren, is that right? Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Good. So, are you driving yet, or? Oh, okay, not yet. Okay. Well, let me ask a couple questions for you guys. So, you guys just had your first meeting last month, is that right?
yeah.
What made you want to be a part of this club?
Well, my sisters did do Buddies Club at the high school, and we thought it was a good idea to take gen ed students and students with disabilities and put them together and just make friends.
Excellent. Excellent. Anybody else have a reason why they wanted to join? Yes.
I enjoyed working with the kids on Fridays in the mornings on advisory days. I have a great time with them.
Okay, good. And just for anybody here, at the first meeting, what was the favorite activity that you guys ended up doing?
What was your favorite activity? One of you can go while I give you put up
Okay.
favorite activity.
Probably dance parties and doing puzzles and games.
Oh, great. Anyone else?
Maybe the name game?
The name game.
Yeah.
Is that how you kind of got to get to know each other?
Yeah.
Dance.
Okay.
Dance.
Oh, he liked to dance, huh?
Yeah.
Excellent. You could be on the Ellen show with that. I think. So, okay, we're going to come up behind you guys and take some pictures with you, and I want to thank you again for leading us in the pledge. All right?
I'm so happy with that.
Yeah, we'll just stand behind you guys. We don't know what camera to look at. So.
Can we get on your knees, buddy? You want to? No. Okay. What about this? Can we get you to stand on here so we can see you? Would that be okay? All right. Step there.
I might move that back a little bit.
Thank you. Just a little bit for you. Step back for me, Donna. Step back a little bit.
Make sure we get our insurance bill this month.
There he is. All right, buddy. Yes, you did. TT. You want to get down, Hunter? You okay? All right. You want to chair again?
All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks again a lot, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, great job. Thank you for coming out. Happy birthday. Thank you, guys. Watch out in the parking lot. Be careful stepping down.
Eat it all done. No candy.
Oh, thanks.
He wanted to play, so I grabbed it. Nice job, bud. Thank you guys so much. Great job, you guys. I'm a little lonely down here.
Connor, my son Charlie, passed away. That was his best friend. Yeah, last year. Last year.
And that's his best friend. He can be Leslie for today. Or Doug. He can be Leslie for today. He can
All right. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Mr. Armstrong, do we have any public comment related to the special meeting? Okay. Then we will move on to Wold Architects and Engineers fixed architectural fee for Huntley High School Fine Arts additions. Mr. Rankosik.
At the last board meeting, the Board of Education was presented some information about what the Huntley High School Fine Arts additions schematic design investigation review was. It had some budget numbers included in there that were refined numbers from a lot of work by a committee and our consultant team. And this proposal is the first step in the process to go forward to for the architects and engineers to get together and do a design that on paper, plans and specifications, so we can go out to bid. The numbers included here do follow the estimate that was provided. So, be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on this contract?
Is there supposed to be attachments in the packet?
Yeah. We the packet we have doesn't have the links.
Well, there is no contract. I apologize for that. If you read in their letter, we did an extensive contract review when we did the Huntley 3000 editions with the Field House and the West Science edition. And what we're proposing is to follow those contracts, just change the scope of work. Those contracts were legally reviewed by our lawyer extensively and served us well back then.
Any other questions? All right. I'm going to make a motion to approve the architectural contract for Huntley High School Fine Arts Edition in the amount of $199,353 plus reimbursable expenses. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Guerin. Any other discussion? Okay, let's
Just,
have.
why, I mean, this is the same, did we see the letter in January itself, or no?
I believe that was in the last.
I remember
last
seeing it,
packet.
I was just trying to recall when it was.
So,
I'm sorry,
The
the
letter,
not the contract, but the letter itself, the January 18 letter.
what about it?
The question is, did we see that letter?
You did not see this letter at the presentation last meeting.
Okay. It wasn't in the packet?
No, is it not at your place?
It's
No.
not. That's the question.
There's no attachments to this agenda?
There's attachments online.
No, there's not.
Hold on.
So I think what
Oh,
we'll
well,
need to
there's
do is table this, move on to the other items, and if we
Wait,
can-
hold on. Let me check while you guys go on to the.
We get a copy of that to us. Okay.
But it was on there. So unless board book went down.
All right. Julie, the agenda that we have given to us usually has links to these, and there are no links to these three items on here. Okay. All right. Does anybody have a problem with tabling this motion that's been seconded, and we can?
actually,
If anything, we should probably suspend the meeting because there's 3 actionable items here.
All right.
Right.
yeah, it's in the private one, it's in there. Yeah, the link in.
Okay.
They're not there.
Sorry, folks.
This link that should come down.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay, yeah, the motion's been made, it's been seconded. We now have the document at our fingertips.
Sure.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, since there's none, let's have a roll call vote.
Mr. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Guerin?
Yes.
Mr. Troy?
Yes.
Mr. Quagliano?
Yes.
Mrs. Melendi? Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Fleck?
Yes. Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next item is the construction manager fee letter of the proposal for the Fine Arts Edition. Mr. Rinkosik again.
Once again, the numbers in here are numbers that you have seen in the estimates that were presented with the schematic design presentation, and the contractual terms would be the same terms that were agreed to back when we did the other recent high school editions, as referenced in the document. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Give everybody a chance to kind of review this document. So these are broken down into various aspects, and if I'm reading this correctly, the total construction management fee is the $496,879. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
It's on page 5. All right. Where it summarizes.
Okay. Any questions on this? Looks like the numbers are matching up with the proposal.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Well, with that, then I will make a motion to approve the construction management fee for the Fine Arts edition in the amount of $496,879. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Mr. Troy. Any further discussion? All right, let's have a roll call on this.
Mr. Quagliano?
Yes.
Mr. Fleck?
Yes.
Mrs. Melendi? Mr. Guerin?
Yes.
Mr. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Troy?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Next item number 6 is the Grounds Management Services request for proposal 2018-04. Mr. Rinkosik.
I thank the board for allowing us to include this in a special meeting. The timing is appropriate. This contract has expired last November 10th, and the new contract season will start up. The seasonal contract with the regular monthly charges will commence in the middle of March, but there is a unit price part of this contract project that is unique to us. And the contractor, we did an interview of the 2 lowest bidders, and there were some missing documents, as you can see with the other one. These people have a unit price for one-time clearing of our detention and retention ponds, which are sorely needed. These are the stormwater management ponds that retain the water to the appropriate flow rates off the property in large events. And if we neglect them for too many years and they start to, as the term is, silt up, if you will, when they have a lot of vegetation in them, debris builds up, and all of a sudden the volume of the ponds is reduced, we will then diminish our stormwater management capability. I know it's a big number, but I actually talked to someone and got an estimate for one of our larger ponds on this property, and it was a whole lot more money to start to reconstruct completely with earth-moving equipment one pond. And this is manpower. That unit price is for manpower and some licensed chemical application to bring this back down to clear minimal vegetation that we would manage very very tightly around the edge of the ponds to try to keep the goose population from marching out of the pond still, but yet to keep larger vegetation at bay. And so it's our recommendation to award the service contract cost over that 3-year term. And there is language in the bid specification that suggests that the board, at the board's discretion, that contract could be extended if there is good performance for an additional 7 years, for a total contract period of 10 years, if we so choose. But you'd be awarding a bid of $505,200 for the 3-year term, and all the unit prices for any kind of unit price spot services, one of which is the big number there, the $129,000 for the pond clearing.
All right. Mr. Troy, you were in on the evaluation of these proposals.
Mm-hmm.
Do they look good to you?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have anything to add? Or?
I think probably the biggest thing is that pond management, and so there were 2 different strategies that were presented, and personally I like the strategy that was used by the vendor that's being recommended tonight. So I know there's a larger price tag to that, but I think in the long term there's a better benefit to that, and utilization of that strategy as well.
All right. Any other questions?
So the only other question is, what do you typically have budgeted annually for this?
This contract has been all over the board. I've been here 17 years now. So we've bid it a number of times. And in the past, each time the annual cost for service has gone down.
Okay.
This time it's going back up. The last year it cost us $120. The last contract was $125,000 a year. This year it's $175. I think not $175. What is that? 100 and whatever that is. It's more. 155 or something. 65. We did ask for some services. We had an experience. One of the years of the last contract, we enjoyed having more surveillance and management by the company that was providing the service, and the appearance of the grounds was improved. I actually commended them at the end of that year that the grounds looked better than they ever had in this school district. And I recognized that provided quality, so I built in the new specification that there should be that supervisory responsibility. Now, I'm not going to say that's all of the cost, but it surely was a bit of it.
Yeah, and just for reference, back in 2012-13 timeframe, the contractual amount that we were spending on the grounds contract exceeded $200,000 a year, $210,000 approximately. So you can see, based on this 3-year contract amount, that over the years, that has come way back, and the 505 currently includes, the pond maintenance as well. So, oh, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it did. Based on the memo.
The other thing I wanted to advise the board is, I think another thing that I've discovered is, I brought this to the board with the custodial contract. The cost of labor has gone up, and what you could buy manpower for 5 years ago when the old contract was bid, and what you can get good manpower that'll consistently come to work now is different. So that surely impacted this as well. But.
And I believe there's a bill that's seeing some light of day down in Springfield on minimum wage. So it's going to be interesting. All right. Any other questions? If not, I will make a motion to approve the bid to CT Beach in the amount of $505,200.
I'll second.
Okay. There's been a second from Mr. Troy. Any further discussion? There being none, let's have a roll call.
Mr. Troy?
Yes.
Mrs. Melendi? Mr. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Quagliano?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Guerin?
Yes.
Mr. Fleck?
Abstain. Okay, the motion carries. There being no other items on the agenda for the special meeting, at 6:32, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second from Mr. Quagliano. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We are adjourned from the special meeting, and we will now call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting at 6:32. Let's have roll call to open that meeting.
Mr. Quagliano?
Here.
Mr. Fleck?
Here.
Mrs. Melendi? Mr. Gentry?
Here.
Mr. Guerin? Mr. Troy?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Here.
Okay. That's 3 off. Next item, is there any public comment for this meeting? Okay, there being none, we'll move on to revision and adoption of the agenda. Get my cheat sheet out here. Let's see. I'm just going to ask, is there anybody that has no report, nothing on the agenda? Because it looks like everything has got some sort of items on there. Okay. Well, then I will make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented with no revisions.
Second.
Second from Mr. Quagliano. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. On to curriculum and instruction, Mr. Guerin.
Thank you. 4.1 is elementary band and orchestra. Dr. Schlichter?
Yes, thank you. So this is really a precursor to one of the items that is going to come forward in the tiers of hiring. And I just wanted to share with the board that we are putting forward a proposal for band and orchestra to be added at the 5th grade level. We are very, very excited about this opportunity. And there's a basic structure there. Obviously, pending approval, we would go forward with staff members making a more specific plan. But the general concept is in front of you, and we will be adding the necessary funds to our budget for the upcoming year, and so we absolutely can absorb that. And very excited for the opportunity, and we'll take any questions if you have them.
Any questions?
Glad to see it back.
I guess there's no questions.
Yeah.
So are we voting then on this at the next
yeah,
meeting?
for the next meeting,
Okay.
because we're doing the addition of programming and classes, yeah.
Okay. So then I would propose we move it forward to the next meeting. Any issues? No, we're good. All right. That was quick. 4.2 District Management Group. Ms. Lombard.
Sure. In your packet, what you'll see is both a memo as well as the DM Group's pricing proposal for a special education opportunity review. We've talked about looking at doing a internal review or an external review to look at, as we know, this year, it's our first year where we have been fully withdrawn from CEDM. We have all of our programs back in-house. There are a few things sometimes we do need to contract out because of some staffing issues or concerns there. And part of withdrawing is the ISBs coming in, and they do a couple-day review of what's going on here in the district, making sure we're meeting the requirements and doing all of the things that we said we did in our presentation back, was that last February? Last February, March. So they'll be coming out here in just a couple weeks, but it's kind of a mini review, if you will, of a checklist. We've also, it was 4 years ago, we're in the 3rd year of rolling out. We had done an internal curriculum review, if you will, for our special education program, not our self-contained programs, but our other programs. And one of the big findings of that was switching some of our programming to look at something more robust with co-teaching, where more of our students with special needs are pushed into the regular ed setting in a co-teaching model where they're getting the same curriculum, they're getting the same standards and things. So as we look at this is now the 3rd year we're doing that. We have talked about having a review to really look in depth at all of our programs, all of our staffing, looking at our workloads and everything. DM group, it was recommended to us. I know Dr. Rowe actually was able to talk to another superintendent who had utilized them. We reviewed everything. We've had some conference calls with them, and the pricing proposal goes much more than just pricing. If you look at that, it's a very robust, they call it an opportunity review. Kind of outlines there are 5 steps that really look at all aspects of not only our special education program, but our RTI, response to intervention, as well as they look at some things with the general education, because it really is going to provide some high impact opportunities that should impact all of our students. So if we look at our desired outcomes of the review, we want to identify commendations for practices that are being done here in the district. We know that there are wonderful programs and wonderful processes that are going on in our special education program. We want to highlight those. We want to identify high impact opportunities to drive continuous improvement, not only for our special education program, but for all students. To improve outcomes and services for students below grade level, both with and without IEPs. Develop a prioritized action plan that will assist in reducing the achievement gap and equity gap between special education and general education students by increasing student growth in the areas of academic and social emotional learning. Gain a better understanding of the best practices. Identify what are those best practices that we know we're already doing in the district that are going to continue to raise our student achievement. And then to have a thoughtful and measurable and deliberate implementation of these best practices that, again, won't just impact our students with special needs, but impact all the students within the district. So this time we are asking that, well, I guess it would be the curriculum committee would move forward to the full board the pricing proposal for special education opportunity review. It is $95,000. We are able to split that over the course of 2 years. This isn't a review that we would rush. We hope to start that in the spring. It would involve a lot of stakeholders, a lot of interviews, observations, data collection, all those things. So it would be going into the summer and into next school year. So we would be able to divide that cost over the course of both fiscal years. And we also know that we are able to utilize IDEA grant or the IDEA grant for the funds there. Are there any questions? Again, we're really excited about this opportunity because it really can enhance all learning for all of our students here within the district.
Yeah, I think it looks great. I don't have any specific questions. Anybody else? Mr. Gentry?
And you may have said it as you went through it, but
Sure.
just to kind of what, expectation-wise, what would you expect to be outcomes? Or is that too early to say?
Well, I think that one of the things definitely we know there are a lot of different things, practices that we have, procedures going on to highlight what are those really good things that are going on. A lot of times a review will come out where there's a long list of things to identify. We know that we have great things that are going on in the district. We also know that there are some things that if we could tighten up. But what this group is able to have because of their research is seeing some of those best practices, or seeing some of those practices. Maybe it's with staffing, or we look at the workload. We look at scheduling kinds of things. I think that having another eye coming out and seeing what other districts across the nation are doing in there, we would really like to be able to learn to how can we tweak those things to even better our model that's going on. Co-teaching is best practice, and we know that, but there's some difficulties with co-teaching. One of those is how do you schedule in that collaboration time? Especially when I think about our high school. We need that collaboration time for gen ed and regular ed teachers at every level, but we think about the size of our high school and how do they have time to do collaborate when they're working maybe with 5 or 6 different subjects on any given day, and to be able to bring in looking at what are other models with comparable districts or comparable schools. How do we tighten that up, and how do we look at some of those kinds of things there? And I think we'll be able to gain feedback both through this ISBE review that's kind of more the mini review, but this on parent feedback as well, or what are the things that we might, we've really developed some of these programs, maybe where are some of the next areas, to go and move forward with.
So it sounds like just more a broader regional and national perspective on
Absolutely.
what's out there.
What's out there, yeah.
Okay.
So I have a question. So basically, they would do an independent assessment of what we're doing well in the district and overall nationally what other people are doing well, and then come together and do a compilation of what the best practices are.
So they have a large library database of best practices. Both our special ed directors are very well versed on what are those best practices and things that are out there. But also, how does that look in different settings and different sizes and whatnot? So they come in, they already have kind of that database of all of that. One of the very first things that they would do is there's going to be a core kind of driving focus group, if you will, of individuals from the district. Because one thing that every school district has a different story. What's our current reality? And we need to be able to tell that story. And so that's something will help drive those specific things. What are we hoping to gain out of this? What are some of those identified areas that we would like some further delving into, if you will? But also, what do they see as some of the struggles across the nation? So that'll be one of the first components of that. And then they really dig in and analyze what are our current practices. They'll be pulling schedules. They'll be looking at data of student achievement. They'll be looking at workload kinds of things. They'll be looking at just a wealth of all of that. How do we do all of these components? And there might be things that they're saying, this is spot on, or here you could streamline this by doing these things, which then can have that high impact on the student achievement component. So we'll be very involved in this, but their expertise and the things that they've learned over time, they'll kind of mesh together to get what are those high opportunity areas there. And then we come back together as at the end as kind of a 1 or 2 day retreat on how do we go ahead and move forward, similar to the strategic plan. Now that we've got all this information, how do we put forward that action? Because getting the information is great, but if we don't have a plan moving forward, it just sits there on a shelf. So
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I do have a quick. So do we know how many of these guys have done for other districts? I don't know that you're going to know.
I do not, but I can get that before next board meeting.
Yeah, just to have an idea. And I know Dr. Rowe, there was one district in particular I think he had talked to, but I mean, I don't know if there's more than just one that we're
sure.
relying on as far as how they like the process with these.
Yeah,
I love the idea. I mean, I think it's good to have somebody from the outside.
But I can get more specifics on that.
Yeah.
And they do more than just this review. I think, Dr. Schlichter, you're sitting in actually, I don't know if it's a training or a webinar on something with strategic planning. You know, they're just that whole, they have a whole kind of breadth of other areas they look at for reviews, but I'll get that.
Yeah, they're looking at, with another neighboring district, they're looking at equity and scheduling. And so then they're putting on a workshop for actually others. So that's where I got the invitation to that district, because that group is going to be holding a workshop to share what they've learned with that district. So really it is a breadth of best practice and research.
Mm-hmm. But I can get that for you.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions? All right, then I propose we move that to the February 21st meeting as well, if there's any issues. And we will pass it to Policy Committee. Mr. Troy?
It's that time of year again where the policies get updated as a reflection of different legislation, and we have a ton of them here. Mrs. Walker, have you reviewed? I'm guessing you have. Anything stand out? I'm not going to cover these individually. There's too many to go over individually. To me, it seemed like I'm all for following the law, right? And that's typically what these updates reflect. I didn't see anything unique that was district specific. So, unless you did, but I didn't see anything. Okay. Any questions from the board about any of the policy changes? Okay. So, Mrs. Walker, any objections to moving this forward then for the next board meeting? Okay. Thank you. And that's it for policy this evening. Unless there's something from the cabinet to update here. Okay. Yeah. There's just so many of them, but when I look, like I said, yeah. Yep. Thank you. Okay, moving ahead. HR committee, please.
All right. First item up is item 6.1, HR updates. Mr. Zier.
And this is a typical HR update from our department, getting ready to get into hiring season. So getting excited about that as we start to onboard new employees as we go into and get prepared for the 1920 school year. Also in this memo, we've got some annual dates that pop up here for non-renewals, RIF notices, and also a notice at the next board meeting when we'll discuss it in closed session, but you'll see the long personnel report where we release folks from the activities and the coaching positions every year. So just a heads up on that coming forward here next month.
Okay. Any questions on 6.1? All right. Next item is 6.2. I believe we have reviewed this language before and had a preview. It looks consistent. New course, a memo of understanding.
Yeah, creation of a new course. Myself, Dr. Schlichter, and HEA got together on this and tried to simplify this process in terms of compensating our teachers for the creation of a new course. And this is some language that helps with that and makes it very clear in terms of how teachers will be compensated for the creation of a new course.
Okay, any questions on that? If not, we'll carry that forward for approval. And it brings us to 6.3, FY fiscal year 20. That sounds odd to say already.
Yeah, it's weird to type too.
Fiscal year 20, staffing tiers, Mr. Zier.
So the staffing tiers are informational purposes only. There's no board action that takes place on this until we bring the actual folks forward to hire for these positions. You do have an updated tier list at your place in an upload. It looks like a couple things got left out here, so we want to make sure you're seeing what needs to be up there and what's being budgeted for, and we'll update board book as soon as we can. It's just 2 items on there, and I'll highlight those as we go through. Starting with line 1 there with the social workers, we continue to see this need to support our students with social emotional learning throughout the district. So proposing to move forward, adding some social workers. I'm primarily going to be at the secondary level for these positions. We have 3 to 5 listed. We will start off on the low end of that at 3 and move forward from there. Have a team lead for our vision and hearing team lead there. One of the one areas where we didn't have a team lead position for special services, so something that's very important that we have someone guiding us in that area. Data analysis, and this is a position that will live up with Dr. Bazinski. Essentially, we have one person right now managing a lot of the data that's coming into the district, and this new position will assist that immensely. Instructional tech TOSA used to have this position. We had instructional techs or ed techs. Decided that we need that instructional tech support throughout the district to help with maintaining some of these technical supports for teachers and instructional coaches at this time. Assistant Superintendent for Special Services, that's been updated in your memo there. We did put a salary and benefit number on that of $165,000, and these numbers are high-end estimates of salary and benefits included. As we look at that position, many different areas that we're expecting that position to cover that we have gone over in terms of special education, 504 plans, education, equity, and I'm sure I'm missing something that will, social emotional learning, that will fall under that position. So Dr. Rowe and Cabinet looked through this and decided that this was a very essential part to the district to continue to move forward in those areas. Elementary inquiry special teachers. And you'll see we have an internal restructure stated there. As the board knows, we are experiencing a significant decrease in enrollment. And as enrollment decreases, we know and noticed that our FTE doesn't need to be as high as it is. So with some ideas that were bounced around out there, we're looking to internally post these positions and adding a new special at the elementary level that will be STEM focused. So as we fill that internally, as folks come out of those elementary positions, we obviously would not fill those positions. And we're hoping to expand at the K-5 level the hands-on learning for our students with the STEM concentration there. Any questions on those positions? Okay.
Just quick, if you can expand a little bit on that first line of the social workers and what their scope of, kind of the scope of the need that's being addressed.
Yeah, so as we look at the social workers there, as they come into those secondary buildings, we're looking for support for our regular ed students, essentially. What we're finding is students are coming down to counselors, and when they're having these meetings with the counselors, it's taking up a lot of time. And I actually got to sit in a training with all of our counselors and social workers, and they express that sometimes working through some of the concerns and issues that our students have is taking up a lot of time. So we're hoping this helps to alleviate that. And starting out with this number, and social workers and counselors, it's tough for them to operate on a schedule because, when you get a student and you're talking through those issues, you don't want to put a time limit on that, but you also want to be able to address as many students as possible. So that's the hope with bringing those new positions forward.
Yep.
Elementary band and orchestra, this would be the staffing for that, adding that at the 5th grade. So I'm very excited about bringing that aboard. Curriculum writing TOSAs. The curriculum writing teachers on special assignment are going to be used to write curriculum at the elementary level. And so these are positions that would be hired internally from our internal staff with elementary experience. They would be writing curriculum for 1 year. This would not be a permanent position. They would then return to the classroom. If there's anything you guys want to add on that, feel free to. Any questions on those positions? Okay, college and career counselor. We're looking to add a counselor over at the high school that their primary focus is going to be for students communicating with these universities and guiding students towards careers. Like I spoke a little bit earlier, when we talk to our counselors, sometimes the time in their day gets consumed with student concerns and issues. So we're hoping this position can help make that a more robust process at the high school in terms of allowing students who need to come specifically to communicate, whether it's about a career or with a university, we have someone who's focused on that, and a very common position in a high school our size. And department chair restructure. What is going to happen here with the department chair restructure? We're going to start off with our 4 core areas for our department chairs, and what they're going to do, they're going to help bridge the gap between the middle schools and the high school. And where we're going to be able to absorb that is they currently teach some classes now, and they'll no longer be responsible for teaching those classes. So we're going to make those connections with English, social studies, science, and math, and have those department chairs come down to the middle schools to work with those teams. We kind of did it a little bit this year with social studies. Mr. Truax came down to our middle schools and met with some of the social studies teachers here at district office, and it was extremely successful and very well received from the middle school. So helping to get that vertical alignment aligned a little bit better than what it currently is. So you see the update there at your place. That should be 753. And then one more update, and then I'm going to have Mark talk about the budget and these numbers. That high school custodian should be off of Tier 2 also. So we'll get the correct one updated to the digital board book. But Mark's going to speak a little bit here in terms of how these items have been built into the budget.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zaire. With the memo that you have in front of you, it totals a pretty big number, but I do, want to let the board know that that is salaries and benefits. So for the Tier 1 proposed hires, from social workers to the data analyst to the assistant superintendent for special services, and the college and career counselors, and the elementary band and orchestra teachers. We will be, and you will see this in 2 weeks when I present you the first draft of the FY20 budget. The base salary for those positions approximates $460,000. So you will see that broken out separately in that draft, the first draft of the budget, as we will be putting the Tier 1 positions into that budget. So it's not the $753,000 that you have in front of you, because that includes benefits, and benefits are budgeted independently of base salary. So I did want to point that out. And right now, where we stand on draft 1 of the budget, we're in pretty good shape. Pending. If we continue to move forward at the state level of setting aside $350 million in accordance with the evidence-based funding model, which has been past practice for the last 2 years, if the new governor and down in Springfield continue to do that, we will be in good shape, not great shape, but we will be in good shape going into FY20, especially for the first draft of the budget. So stay tuned for that, but I did want to share that information with you as well.
Any concerns on the ability to fill the positions as far as candidate availability, identification, et cetera?
Probably out of all these positions, the social work arena could be interesting for us. We've been finding we get candidates, but getting good candidates with school experience. But I think we'll be okay getting out this early. We've got enough time in front of us that I think we'll be okay. But in terms of recruiting these positions, I think we'll be in pretty good shape.
Okay. Any other questions from committee or board? Okay. If not, we'll take item 6.3 to the board for approval, and then turn it over to finance committee.
We don't. There won't be action on that item.
Oh, it's just a report. Yep. My apologies.
Thank you.
That's right.
Okay. All right. 7.1 payables. We have our purchase orders, impress checks, accounts payable, and disbursements listed. Do we have any questions or concerns on those items?
None here.
Okay, we will move that forward to the board for approval. 7.2 revenue and expenditures report. Mr. Altman.
Thank you very much. In front of you, you do have the December 2018 6-month ending financial executive summary. The district continues to track favorably within budget with a net operating surplus as of December 31st, 2018 of $1.229 million. Favorability is primarily the result of running a little bit favorable on salaries and benefits. Those two line items are currently approximating 49.1% of the budget versus the 50% expected. Typically in the latter half of the year, we'll pick up on that a little bit based on stipends and things of that nature coming down the pipeline, as well as adjusting and finalizing year-end accruals. But not all of it. We're still expecting hopefully a little favorability, especially on the health insurance line item. But knock on wood that we can continue to do that in the second half of the year. Looking at page 2 of the financial executive summary, there in front of you, you have we have receivables as of December 31st for the Q1 and Q2 mandated categoricals. Finally, the good news is in January we did receive Q1, so the state did make payment on that. Hopefully we can continue to get Q2 shortly thereafter in the next month or so, and that's what we're expecting, so stay tuned on that. Health insurance is tracking. Fortunately, December was not a super high month. It's trending down a little bit, so hopefully we see that in January. In the early months of January, the payments that we have seen come in are trending pretty much the same way we're seeing in October and December. November was a very high month, but we'll continue to look at health insurance. On the dashboard side, I did want to point out one revenue item, and that is Medicaid funding. As we all know, we do a really good job claiming Medicaid revenues. Unfortunately, the state is not paying us for those Medicaid remittances. We have received remittances telling us they will be paying us. So you're seeing a pretty large variance from prior year of $323,000 versus the current year revenue of $68,000. But based on current remittances that we're seeing, we are trending with prior year revenue. Now, that being said, we are approximately $68,000 short of prior year when you look at all those moving parts. And part of that shortfall, and it's noted here on the dashboard, is Health and Family Services, which processes the payments on our behalf. Every year they kind of look back and they do a self-audit, a correction, if you will, on prior claims filed, and they actually kind of take away money from you. I wish I could audit that myself, but we can't. They haven't done that for a few years, and they actually did it for the years 2013 through 2015, and ended up making a $68,000 correction against our claims, against our remittances, and so that is the approximate shortfall that we're seeing now based on all of that data that I just shared. So we will be continuing to monitor that and working with the state to figure out what is the delay in payment, especially on Medicaid. So that's a little surprising. They're normally not this far behind on Medicaid payments.
Is there any appeal process on that, or that's the internal audit mechanism?
Yeah, that's an internal audit, but we're looking in. I'm doing a deeper dive with Health and Family Services, and I know Debbie and Darlene in our fiscal office are also looking at a lot of that. So we'll continue to look at that, and personally I want to see if we can get a little more information on that $68,000.
Thank you.
So on that, with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions. On the expense side, with salary and benefits at 49%, I think overall we're tracking favorable.
Any further questions from anyone?
Just a quick clarification on the budgets, like salaries and such. That's all kind of 12 even months in the budget from a budget standpoint.
I'm sorry.
Is it equal months, spread equal across the months?
Correct.
Okay,
it
so
is.
there's no seasonality or anything like that.
Well, there's a little seasonality at the end of the year, which I mentioned because of stipends and year-end accrual adjustment. But other than that, it's generally 49 to 50% each way. But in the latter half of the year, it tends to be more 50% of the overall budget.
Budgeted.
Oh, it's budgeted, yeah.
Okay.
We are still tracking, and we will continue to track within budget on salaries and benefits. Well, health insurance will tell us the story on that by year-end.
Okay.
Okay. 7.3 is the fiscal reports. Mr. Altmeyer, anything on your monthly fiscal updates?
There's a few things I want to point out, and one thing that I don't have on my fiscal memo that I do want to talk to the board about. Senate Bill 1064, that was the Certificate of Error and Abatement bill that we worked very hard with Senator McConaughey with last year. We then worked with David Olson, the Representative David Olson, who left. And actually last week I had the opportunity to meet with Senator DeWitt, who is carrying the torch on this very rapidly. He's already met with Senator Menard, and Senator Menard and DeWitt are very energized. They're very, they definitely want to move forward with this bill, and I'm going to actually have another meeting with Senator DeWitt maybe even tomorrow, or at least a conference call with him to review the plan and strategy for moving forward with this new bill. So hopefully we can revitalize that and bring back a couple $100,000 to the district on an annual basis, and frankly over $100 million to the state of Illinois school districts as a result of that bill. So stay tuned on that. I'm very pleased with the new senator and Menard willing to pick this up and run with it very quickly here. So good news there. Nothing else really to note. I did want to talk a little bit about the property tax relief grant. We talked about that several months ago, and that was a grant. The state set aside $50 million to allocate to districts if they abated dollars towards their, whether it was debt or off of their 2018 levy, they would be eligible if they applied for the property tax relief grant. Well, the award winners came out, and there's 28 award winners, and we're not one of them. We're 189th on the list out of, I'm not sure how many, but I don't think all 863 applied, but we're 189th on the list. But if you haven't had a chance to look at that list also includes the percent of adequacy. It includes There are a few districts on that list that are Tier 4 funding districts, meaning they are in excess of 100% of adequacy. So let me give you an example. There's Oak Park River Forest, and I don't want to throw them under the bus, but I'm going to. They are a Tier 4 district, and they are 129% of adequacy. Okay? If they choose, they can earn up to $3.74 million per year, because it's the gift that keeps giving, because it becomes part of the evidence-based formula. $3.74 million. They're currently spending $22,000 per student. They only have about 2,800 students, so that $3.7 million is about $1,335 per ADA student, which, if you remember, the foundation level used to be $6,119. That's about 22% of the overall foundation level. So we're talking some huge dollars here. And the reason, when it first came out, I think everybody thought that the percent of adequacy, the tiered evidence-based formula model, was kind of baked into the property tax relief grant. But it's not, as evidenced by 2 districts, Tier 4, receiving the grant. Well, what it's pegged off of is tax rate. And what it's pegged off of, let me give you an example. Our operating tax rate is $4.66 for this exercise. Right. Since we are a K through 12 district, there's a multiplier, right? Because we service a community of K through 12. Our multiplier is 1. If you're a high school district and you only have 4 grades, your multiplier is 3.25, because you only have 4 grades out of 13. So 13 divided by 4 is 3.25. So when you're looking and you kind of analyze, and I did this because that's what I do, Oak Park River Forest, their tax rate is $3.47. Multiply that by the multiplier of 3.25, and it arrives at 11.3. And that 11.3 put them 15th on the list in terms of that is the estimated total tax rate for their community, 11.3 versus Huntley's 4.66. But that's not the true story, because there's only one other district that supports Oak Park River Forest, and that's District 97, and they're a K through 8 district. They're District 97. So I don't know why the state just isn't looking at the operating tax rate of District 97, which, by the way, is 3.9. So 3.9 plus 3.47 is 7.37. And if they use 7.37 instead of this arbitrary inflated multiplier, they would be about 80th or 90th on the list, and they would not be receiving $3.7 million. Our neighbors, District 155, were 29th on the list. How would you like to be them? They didn't get anything because they only funded the first 28. But they have the exact same situation. If they use District 47 and District 155, they would be at 6.69, and they'd be in the 80s as well, not 29th. So, IASBO, the Alliance, everybody is aware of the issues here.
So, IASBO, what are you guys advocating for in this formula? What do you think is a fair allocation of a rebate system like that?
It needs to be tied to the evidence-based formula, and adequacy of funding has to be a component of the calculation, so that the majority of the $50 million are awarded to districts that need it, not to districts that are in excess of 100% of adequacy.
Just because they're inadequately or below adequacy doesn't mean that they're getting all their money from. I mean, the system, if I'm thinking about it right, should rebate districts that are getting a lot of money from their source is from property taxes, but it needs to be as a percentage of something, whether it's their EAV. I mean, it shouldn't go by tax rate.
Correct. I think it needs to be a combination of both.
Yeah.
Well, shouldn't that multiplier...
A district who is spending $22,000 per student, who has the tax base as Oak Park River Forest, they have more ability to cut taxes, and they don't need the grant. So it certainly needs to be a combination of both, high tax rate as well as
what you're
adequacy.
Getting in overall taxes extended to your students and kind of looking at that. I mean, you should be starting with that first and then working off of some other type of factor, I would think.
Yeah.
I mean, I did see the article on this, and I did see the preponderance of the districts that were getting this assistance were, you wouldn't have expected that would have been the result.
No.
And shouldn't have, I don't think that was the intention of what the law should have been.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
So, all right.
Yeah.
So my thing would be, again, IASVO is a, sphere of influence, and I would encourage you being higher up in that group that you would start working that one.
Yeah. That's the plan.
There's an obvious, and you pointed it out, there's a huge obvious flaw in this multiplier. Has anybody raised this? And it seems like there's bad results resulting from this formula.
I'm not sure what discussions have taken place down in Springfield, but I know the Alliance and I know Dr. Jacoby and Brent Clark and team have discussed these things, and they're hoping to make some traction this spring down in Springfield regarding this, because this needs to be corrected moving forward.
I guess, they're supposed to, whenever they do these revenue bills and stuff, they're supposed to show, ISB should have, when they were proposing this law, should have had, well, here's based on last year's results, these are the people who would have benefited.
I think it was thrown in
the last
such,
second.
yeah.
Yeah, right, I get it. So it wasn't well thought.
It was the nth hour, and that's what happened. So just wanted to bring you up to speed on that, and that is the end of my monthly fiscal update.
Or the rant this week. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
It's all right. I'm with you. All right. We also have under fiscal reports, we have the activity funds report. Any questions or concerns on that report? If not, we'll move on to 7.4, which is establishing the fiscal year. That seems like a really complicated one. Are we all good with that one? Okay, that's good. And it's June 30th. Okay.
Is there grant money for that?
For moving that forward, I probably not. Okay, we'll move that forward to the board. 7.5, designation of person to prepare a tentative budget. Again, another difficult question before us. So I think we're good with Mr. Altmaier and his staff.
This is also one of the reasons why I didn't present the budget tonight. I wanted to make sure that you were okay with me
you were properly
doing the budget.
As such. All right. Well, you are the designee, like it or not. So we'll get that. We'll move that forward to the board. 7.6 is our extracurricular committee recommendation. Mr. Altmaier, take that away.
Thank you very much. As we do every year, the extracurricular committee meets 4 times a year in accordance with the collective bargaining agreement with the HEA. And in doing so, that committee kind of reviews all of the extracurricular clubs, as well as from an athletic standpoint, all of the stipends that we currently do pay, and from an enrollment standpoint, from a number of students in certain athletic programs, as well as a number of students in clubs. Every year we determine if there are new clubs out there or if there are additional needs within athletics for which we need additional stipend positions. This year we had quite a few additional new clubs, as well as additional needs. And because we don't know what's happening down in the state of Illinois, and I'd like to use the budget permitting clause, administration is recommending, we kind of broke up the extracurricular committee's recommendations into 3 different groups. Number 1 is Tier 1 recommended immediately. We feel based on numbers of the programs, or whether it's a need within an athletic sport, we want to move forward right away, and we'll talk about that in a second. The second group is Tier 1 recommended budget permitting. Those are clubs that we do want to move forward with, but we also want to see where are we going to be in 3 or 4 months with the state of Illinois budget, and how will it overall impact the district's budget moving forward. It also gives us an opportunity. We meet 4 times a year as a committee, and we're meeting again here in March, and it gives us an opportunity to kind of regroup and also look a little deeper at the existing clubs we have today, as well as the existing sports we have today, and if there's any opportunities, or maybe we have some clubs and or assistant coaching positions that we no longer need. So I think the committee and we've all agreed that we need to kind of do a little deeper dive on our next meeting to better understand if there's clubs out there for which we maybe should no longer be offering a stipend. And maybe that's just on the interest in the club and the number of students actually participating in a given club, or the number of assistant coaches needed, for instance, maybe on a track team. So we'll be doing that, and we'll be bringing these positions back to the board at a future date, which I'm expecting to do maybe 3-4 months down the road when hopefully, knock on wood, we have more information from the state. The last item in red here, we have Tier 1 stipend lane changes. The Extracurricular Committee does recognize that there are certain positions, whether they're athletic or extracurricular in nature, that the person running the club and or athletic sport is doing quite a bit of work. And the Extracurricular Committee is making a recommendation that they're not paid adequately, so to speak, and recommending a lane change, an increase in stipend. And so we did want to share that with the board, because that's what we do as part of the contract, is the ECC is making a recommendation to the board. But at this time, because of budget permitting, and also because of at this time we feel that this is a little more collective bargaining than not, we are recommending not to do anything with this. It'll give administration a little more time to understand the impact of this and understand the recommendation a little deeper as well. But we feel this is also kind of contract negotiations and collective bargaining, and should be probably saved for a future collective bargaining event, so to speak. So with that, specifically focusing on the Tier 1 recommended chart, which is the green chart on page 1, there are several positions there. And let me start with the high school assistant baseball coach, freshman B. This was kind of a surprise to many of us. Apparently the freshman B team was coached by a volunteer for the last several years and wasn't receiving a stipend, wasn't receiving pay. That person, as I understand it, Mr. Zera, if I'm correct, took a assistant coaching position, a stipended position on the varsity team, leaving the freshman B team open, and it's really hard to fill a coaching position when there's no pay. So this is probably a position that should have had a stipend attached to it all along, and I'm not sure exactly what the history is there and how that happened, but there is an immediate need this spring for that to happen. So that is part of the recommendation there. Then we've got a lot of other positions. Huntley High School Jazz Band. The Huntley High School Jazz Band used to be a class last year, and it's no longer a class, but the teacher took it on himself and kept a very good core group of students, 20-plus students. They practice several times a week. They still do 10-plus events a year. They are very, very active, and working with administration, we felt that that was something we wanted to move forward with because of the situation. It was a class last year. It was opted not to be a class moving forward, but we still feel it's hugely valuable to the students of District 158, and we would like to move forward with that stipend. The other four that we have noted there is National Honor Society, Special Olympics, Snow Raiders, FBLA, and it's really based on the number of students involved in those programs and or safety reasons that we are asking for an additional position, additional stipend position for those clubs, because having only one person being stipend to run National Honor Society with 350 plus kids participating, or the FBLA, or even Snow Raiders, when you have 100 kids on a mountain, having one person responsible and relying on volunteers to consistently showing up is pretty challenging. So from a safety standpoint, from a numbers standpoint, from a need standpoint, these are the Tier 1 recommendations that we are asking the board to approve tonight. Mr. Aney, did I miss anything? Thank you, sir. With that, that is the recommendation from the Extracurricular Committee as well as administration. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm fine with the recommendations, but I do have, and I know we're going to hold this for later discussion, but Can you tell me a little bit more about the lane changes? I got a couple questions on that. These don't exist yet, right?
No, all of these clubs exist.
No, I mean the concept of the lane change. The lanes don't exist yet.
Well, they do exist. So several years ago, if you recall, the Extracurricular Committee and administration worked very hard together to create a new stipend schedule. So based on years of experience, based on number of years running a club or being a head coach or an assistant coach, there is a step in lane type of matrix. Okay, certain sports, certain clubs are in certain lanes based on we looked at what other districts were paying certain clubs, what other districts were paying for certain sports, and based on all of those things within the conference and the local area school districts, we created a step and lane type of matrix. So a lane being football's in one lane, maybe tennis is in another lane. Okay, so high school cheer and high school POMs are currently in lane B and C, respectively, but based on the time and effort and the work they put in, the extracurricular committee is wanting to make a recommendation to move them from B to A, or C to B, for instance.
Okay.
Now we came up with this new lane and step just a few years ago, 3 years ago, I believe, 2 or 3 years, 2 years ago. So we feel at this time, number one, administration needs more time to better understand these recommendations. But number two, we do feel at this time, because that is part of the contract, that matrix is part of the contract, it's also partial collective bargaining at the same time.
Okay. Thanks. That clears things up in my head.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, regarding the jazz band, that one, I've followed that a little bit. That one kind of vexes me a little bit because it used to be a class and that it has that unique designation of belonging in a regularly scheduled day where no longer it does. And I'm not even sure where the question lies, but I wonder if there's an adequacy number there because of its unique stature. So I guess that's more of a comment than a question.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to make it better or does it belong in category B or is it a category A just because of its unique nomenclature?
Yeah, I think we chose category B based on other clubs and where they are and the amount of work and the number of students that they have in the given club. That's generally how, when the extracurricular committee is looking at these and trying to figure out where to place them, so to speak, that's how we do that.
I guess along those lines, though, what is the background and why it was a class and no longer is a class?
I wish Mr. Beelan and Dr. Rowe were here to help answer that question. Ms. Schlichter, Ms. Lombard?
So I don't have the answer on that specific class. I think that would be one of the high school administrators, but my assumption would be typically when that kind of change would be made at the high school level in any district, it would often be because it might have not received enough enrollment to run. Again, to your question of the adequacy number, so that's a good question for them. We can find out what that number is. But because it's so unique and offers that experience, other classes might just not run, and we'd just put it back in the rotation next time and see who registers, but it would be offered as a club because it was unique and offered that experience, so we didn't want to leave it behind. So that would be my assumption based on our past practice. We can definitely get some of those answers for you from Mr. Beelan.
And correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe you don't know, but I believe they also do performances as well.
I believe they do,
like the concert band does their performance, etc. And so the jazz band is part of that evening.
Correct, and they do approximately 10 plus per year.
Yeah.
And they're continuing to do that, which is why we're placing them where we are.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a unique situation, so we can get you some more information.
And I recognize that too.
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions? Because I would, like I said, unless you guys know better than the curriculum committee, I would, we should probably be recommending this to go forward. So.
The committee thanks you.
All right, it's going forward to the board. We're on the building and grounds, Mr. Troy.
Okay, item 8.1, O&M updates. Anything to highlight on the updates, Mr. Ronkosik?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to, off the written memo piece, I'd like to just reflect for a moment on the fun winter we're having. It is a little more than mid-season, and we're at 36.8 inches of precipitation recorded by our meteorologist, and our winter average is about 38. So we're having a big year.
Doesn't include the 5 inches today.
February, there was, it should have been, because we had ice, which is harder. We always say ice is harder than snow. You know, we were lulled. November was a little, one snowfall event that was 7.4 out of the 11.9. December, we only had 1 inch, so we all got complacent. But January, we had almost 24 inches of snow, and then we ended it with a bang here the last week and had 2 ice events that were just horrendous. But we made it through. So I would expect that our winter snow removal and ice management and our ice melt budget is going to be a little high this year. The next thing I would like to do, unless the board would like to talk something on the original memo, is I did put something at your place on additional information, O&M updates, about the matter of our response to the recent so-called polar vortex. There's a little reflection on how the physical plant sustained itself. I'd like to think that all things considered and the weather extremes we had, we did very well. We had 9 incidents that I summarize here in a couple of pages. 5 of them had some minor water leaks. We lost, unfortunately, 2 classrooms, had to be relocated last weekend at McCabe. Restoration company is done. Material putback started tonight, and floor finish replacements are on order. And so we expect to have them back in their room as soon as the floor finish arrives. Unfortunately, that won't be for a bit. We're trying to talk to them about any way we can try to escalate that, or maybe we think about changing the color so we can escalate it. We have to talk to Principal Hoyo and I. Just got some information late this afternoon. Restoration procurements are all in place for what the little losses we had, mostly for carpet. We only got to put 1 sheet of drywall back up for a 1.5 million square foot facility. That's pretty good. We had a couple of scares where we prevented some serious problems. Potential sprinkler dumps, boiler plant failures that we quickly responded to and got back online in time to avoid any real serious temperature drops in the facilities. We had people out Wednesday night in that very nasty weather that were out here from our department making sure that things stayed preserved and protected here. We had a follow-up meeting as a department reflecting on how things went, what we could do to improve, what we could do to better protect the facilities. We made a list of about 7 things that we can work on to maybe even make our protection of the buildings in these kinds of weather conditions better. In the midst of all this, and a little bit of lulls in the last couple of weeks, our meteorologist actually did some long-range forecasts and some overall reflections. And this little polar vortex was a split of the polar vortex, which is unique, and they're saying that's symptomatic of the fact we're going to see more of them. So that we, we want to prepare to make sure we're ready. But I think we did very well. Be happy to answer any questions.
I do have one question on the field house boiler. That's fairly new, so
yes.
I'm curious about that failure.
Well, there was 2 things that happened. The Tuesday night, before the cold spell really hit us hard, we were actually at a staff meeting, and we got a call that the boiler plant failed from our automated system, and we had someone there doing preventive maintenance service, so we called him to go over there and check it out. When he found that we lost a expansion tank, and I don't know if you want to get into the engineering details of that here, but we were very, very lucky that we had one of those in stock here. It's darn near a miracle that it fit. If people stayed after work, we got it in, we got the plant fired back up. Unfortunately, that field house, believe it or not, is now 4.5 years old. So it's out of warranty.
Oh, okay.
So we got her fixed.
4.5 years old? Wow.
Time flies when you're having fun. Then that plant had another kind of a failure Wednesday evening in the bitterest part of that fun event we had that blew through here. And what it was is that is a very high efficiency boiler plant. 3 of 98% efficient condensing low pressure hot water boilers, and they have a staging controller on the wall, digital controller that talks to the 3 of them, and it was having a problem. Fortunately, one of the newer maintenance people we just recently brought on our team had experience with that particular language and equipment, and went over there with another one of our senior team members and got it back on operational, and got us back and warmed up quickly. Fortunately, they had to drive home at about 10 o'clock Wednesday night.
Is there concerns about that moving forward because of the newness of that?
We're going to call the installing representative of that plant. Most boilers in this part of the country are installed by this one company that has installed, I think, almost all the boilers in this district. And they're the factory rep for many brands, including that one. And we're going to call him out and talk to him about this. And see, one thing we could think of is the heck with the high efficiency staging controller and just run things on manual in extreme conditions.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the board? All right. Thank you for that. Anything else on the O&M updates?
No, thank you.
All right. Item 8.2, O&M annual report for FY19.
This is now a running report that I've been doing for 16 years. So there's 16 years of history there on this department, how it's evolved as the district has grown. And so there's a lot of key performance indicator comparatives against ourselves and our history here. And because of the fast growth we had, I'm compelled in a lot of this data to put it on a per square foot basis, because it's not fair to look at it as just a lump sum comparing year to year, because we were growing so fast. Our maintenance staffing levels per square foot have been very flat now for a long period of time, but our PM burden has continued. We keep evolving and putting more burden of preventive maintenance work on the team, and that goes to helping us preserve the district. Our custodial staff has been flat now for staff per square foot for about 10 years. I'm very proud of page 8. And that is our departmental expense tracking over the years. This is, I take audited final expense reports from the fiscal office and put together some unitized costing for us to compare from year to year. And when I look at these, there's of course the total cost per square foot, but also I want to look at that and look at the natural gas separately. Take the natural gas and the capital projects separately. When the capital projects, if you look at that one, it has launched significantly, and of course the district's aging. The board has chose that we should invest to preserve the buildings to close to like new condition. So those expenses are expected to go up. But if you take those capital expenses and the energy costs out, and another reason I take the energy cost out is it's such a variable. Weather. The cost of energy. Natural gas now costs less than half of what it did 12 to 14 years ago. So it's not a fair comparative in mind to put in the mix. But if you just take those things out, and simply the expense for us to maintain, repair, clean the district, our expenses increased in 16 years only 8%. So I'd like to think we've been doing pretty good. There is other information in here. About whether you've got information on our service contract schedule, our energy conservation efforts summarized, benchmarking data. We have 5 Energy Star buildings these days. What do we do? Well, because things aren't breaking that much, are they? Well, we have at least 124 routine inspection processes that we make sure get done every year, besides reacting to repairs and other things. Our work response productivity history is here for your review. That started when there was a strategic plan initiative some years ago, suggesting that we should seek to find improvement, and I think we have. We've had a few minor regressions of late because, unfortunately, we've had some extended leaves. A couple of our key employees have had some extended medical situations And we're starting to come out of that right now. We're down one person that's going to be close to 2 months out away from us right now. That's still causing us to lag a little bit on that front. And there's a sampling of our workload reporting that we do on the last page in there. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you for a very thorough report. Greatly appreciated. All right, since there are no questions on that report, we'll jump into the capital projects report. Item 8.3, please.
This year, this cycle of the February report to the board is a little bit different because the way our financial appropriations going with the large projects, I seek to take a look at the FY20 life cycle projects and mix that in with which is really the detail that we have usually at this time of year, and that is the prioritized administrative team's project list updates, which includes things to enhance the facilities or adjust them to space use or utilization need changes and things that the administration feel would better enhance the operation. And so in order to get a handle on what the overall budget might look like, I took a look forward to what summer 20 life cycle might look like. That's always a living document. We base our life cycle information on historical predicted information from multiple sources on what equipment life should be. But of course, if we do a great job of doing preventive maintenance on it, or maybe we've got the lemon law piece in our building, we may have to adjust those things. And so this look on the life cycle piece will be adjusted as we get closer to August. In the last several years, I presented in the fall, late summer, early fall, the board the life cycle large projects for a final review and to seek feedback before we start getting on the drawing board to go out to bid with those things. So by all means, I'm not looking to gain a consensus on that as yet, but what we're wanting to take a look at now is the FY20 prioritized administrative project list. I will suggest to you that years past we've usually been able to find funding for all the priority 1 projects. It looks like right now we're going to have a bit of a tug of war on does all the life cycle FY20 items do all those items, get completed, or do we and we cut short the administrative project list to not even get all the priority 1s done, or do we adjust the life cycle? And so, we'd like to get started on the administrative projects this summer, but usually the administrative projects list go on through the school year and are done within that fiscal year. So I just want to bring that to the board's attention, and I would be happy to entertain any concerns from the board on what that administrative project list looks like. That starts on page 16, which just tells you in summary that they're prioritized. We ask all leadership to provide us their priorities. And this year we've got some principals that even had 9 items on their list. And it adds up to a total of estimated $1.9 million. But the priority 1 piece of it is just under $713,000. And so we would like to get started on that, but by all means we wouldn't complete that. But would like to hear any concerns that the board might have about that.
Questions or comments from the board or committee and the board?
I don't have any questions on the current year. I'm actually looking forward into the 10-year.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, Tony, because there is some good news there.
I'm
not. You may not look like in some fronts, but I will tell you. Let's take a quick look at that. I guess I usually do that in the fall, but I'll be happy to dive into that a bit. If we go to page, let's see, what is that, Tony? It's the second piece. It's 10.
Yeah, 10.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, 9 is the summary. Yeah, 9.
Yeah, it's 10.
And you look at 9, and you go, oh my, what's this FY21 and 22 big numbers here? Oh, and I apologize. 28's got the the decimal point in there. That's why that one looks like a bigger number. It's really
Right.
not.
It's okay.
Um,
I caught that. I'm okay there.
Well,
I'm not.
but
21,
you
22
you
is
notice
what I
how
was
these
talking
numbers are
about.
going down, except for those two.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
There's two things in there that are really making them bigger numbers. One is in 21, I believe, is replacement of all the air conditioning condensers on the roofs of the middle schools. Those things are, so far, we've only replaced a few condensers in their life, compressors on those condensers. But if you look at ASHRAE predicted life cycle on these things, we're there. And so I just keep putting them out there and kicking the can down the road because they keep performing and things. And the other thing I think it might be 22 is our front-end building automation system, which is several million bucks. I know the board likes us to continue to strive to pursue energy conservation, but we've evolved to a model now where we actually are replacing the digital controllers with our own team and remote phone support and getting the older failing ones replaced and being able to keep what we've got going. But I will tell you the version of the software that we're in 3 on the operating system. We're at 3.8. They quit making 3 after 3.8. They're into 4.3 now or something, and they're still supporting it. But the whole evolution of digital HVAC controls is migrating to a different place. And the world is going pretty much, as I understand, where we're going, is we're at the point now where the next big step for us is to manage our demand of electricity. What is that? The demand of our electricity is, at any single point in time, what's the maximum draw we put on the grid? Of course, if their solar project goes through, we're going to do really good on that one.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, we want to. The next step for us, if we want to continue to become efficient, is to manage that. These newer generation softwares in the 4-point-something provide that opportunity. They do it. You select preferences, and it does it for you. We right now do things that we like randomly tell things to start. We tell the computer you do the thinking on how the equipment has historically performed and decide when to turn things on. And then I tell the staff to set the schedules off 15 minutes on different pieces in a building. But the reality is, when you set them on random and then you set them on different schedules, they could collide on the schedule and all start at the same time anyway and things. So we're not as evolved as newer generation softwares. But once again, that's a big thing to bite off, and I don't think I'm at the point where I could go to the board and say, let's turn this into an energy conservation project that's going to save us enough money to give you a reasonable ROI you're going to be comfortable with. So there's a good chance we'll kick that can down the road a few more years. But it's like a computer, and computers, I think Chris would say that they don't last as long as maybe some of our digital equipment's been in place. And it is a digital piece of the equipment, circuit boards that are the heart and soul of these things. So it's something we need to continue to monitor. On the upside, though, where I wanted to go, is the average annual cost of $2.7 million. A couple years ago, that was 3.9. And we have made some heavy investments the last few years. We're over the hump on those things. We really are as a district overall. Because of those investments, my life cycle report that I have in my workbook is actually much, much longer than 10 years. It goes to life cycles on things. And will we go down through another cycle? Everything has an age, and we may go through another cycle, and I hope I'm living to see it someday, but I may not be working here at that point in time.
I was just going to make the comment. We're dead certain that automated controls work better than somebody manually controlling.
Absolutely. The project we did, CTS, is absolutely demonstrated that to us. Yeah.
Okay. Obviously the lights turning on and off when you enter it, certainly. Talking about more like the HVAC type stuff.
Well, and we did that project. What is that now? That's a long time ago. Golly, gee. 9 years. It's 2010, 2011 is when that thing went in. And the side benefit, besides saving money on energy costs, there's 2 other side benefits. Obviously, less carbon emissions in the environment, number 1. Number 2, comfort. We enhance the comfort because we're doing a better job of managing the environment.
Okay. Well, just like I said, the point of mine is I think you got a few cans you're going to be kicking in 21 and 22.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
Those are big numbers.
Yeah. Beyond the first year, it's always my belief that this report is a tool just to look at the over the long haul. How much should you be putting out there?
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump.
You're
forward
just
like that.
fine. No problem. Thanks for doing that.
There's nothing to talk about.
Any further questions on item 8.3? Okay. Again, thank you very much for a very thorough report. Item 8.4, asphalt crack fill seal coat paint bid.
Okay, this is an investment we're asking the board to consider to extend the life on our newly installed asphalt at Reed Road campus. Pretty much most of what this investment is here. And when new asphalt is put in, we want to try to, within a year, to protect the mix from releasing its oils and its sand that's mixed in with all the aggregate, and keep it there so that it extends its life. It's been my belief and my experience tracking, managing asphalt surfaces for darn near 30 years that first coat is a really important investment to make to extend the life, and so we're asking the board to consider allowing us to do that. As you probably know, we're visiting over there. It's the striping, the traffic lane striping is very complicated. So it's not half or anything, but it's a good chunk of this. Once we coat it, we got to restripe it.
Mm-hmm. Any questions from the committee or the board? Any objections?
I'm sorry. One more thing. Good news. The alternate bid was to provide for. We're not asking the board to approve the alternate bid. That was to provide refreshing the traffic paint at Conley and McCabe parking lots because it's pretty worn off. And when I saw the number, I said, wow, let's talk to our own staff. We invested in a number of years ago when we invested in having a better care of our athletic fields with our in-house staff. We bought him a nice traffic paint machine, and he says he can do this over the summer. It won't cost us anything but the paint. So that's why we're not asking for that.
Thank you. Any objections from the committee with moving this forward? Okay. We'll go ahead and move that forward. Over to Mr. Fleck for the Legislation Committee.
All right. Well, the House and Senate are in session in Springfield, and there's a number of bills that have been proposed, really too many to list here. But Senate Bill 1 is getting some press today. The current Senate Bill 1 has to do with the minimum wage throughout the state of Illinois. It's currently $8.25. It's going to go up to $15 over a period of time, and there will be, well, there's proposed to be credits for small businesses to help cover those increased costs, etc. It hasn't gone to the House yet, but Speaker Madigan has indicated that he is going to support that. So I would fully expect that some version of this is going to end up on the governor's desk. The vote in the Senate was along party lines, 39 to 18. So that to me is something that's going to affect budgets, and it's going to affect the economy around here. Maybe good, maybe not, I don't know. But it is something that's going to happen. I think that Dr. Rowe and Ms. Melendi both are down in Springfield right now for the LUDA conference. Is that right? So they're taking care of business down there with legislation that affects the large unit districts. So that is it for my report. Any questions on that?
Well, the biggest thing I thought was out there was the Education Day, right? I mean, isn't that moved forward in a non-favorable way as it pertains to us?
Yeah,
right?
I tried to look into some details of where that's headed right now. I don't have anything on that right now. So, but they did talk about hours basically in the seats.
Seat time, yeah. 5 hours of seat time.
Yeah, 5 hours of seat time. It could, my reading of it is that it could affect some of the programs that we have.
Yes.
Quite significantly.
Yes.
So but I haven't been able to nail down the details of that yet. So it is something that we should be watching, and we should be really pushing for my Association of School Boards to really
more flexibility in that.
Mm-hmm. So yes,
it's on my radar. Yeah.
Okay. So but I don't have much more than that on this. Okay. Thanks for bringing that up. All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay. That ends Legislation Committee, Board of Education. I kind of threw in what's going on there with the LUDA conference. Now we have some minutes that are out there. I don't have those attached to the thing. So okay. Oh, there they are. Oh, look at that. Okay. Okay. If you guys are speed readers, take a look at that. See if there's anything on there that we need to talk about. But those will be up, and I will. I'd like to move those forward for the regular board meeting, for the summary. All right. With that, it is 7:53. I'd like to make a motion to go into closed session for the items listed on the agenda. There's a second from Mr. Quagliano. That needs to be a roll call.
Mrs. Walker, Mrs. Melendi, Mr. Guerin,
Yes.
Mr. Fleck,
Yes.
Mr. Quagliano,
Yes.
Mr. Gentry,
Yes.
Mr. Troy.
Yes. Okay. We are in closed session. Thank you.
At least the intent was is to try to find a solution to the day definition. It's a typical talk of, well, let's repeal it now and we'll figure out what we really meant to do. So, not that that really adds any answers, but it's... Well, utterly incredible how you can do things like new laws without really thinking about it. Like, how does that happen? Like the grant thing, it's like, how do you get there? But even this like school day thing, it was, oh, we didn't think about that. Right.